Summer board meetings. Well, we are glad to see everybody here today. Sorry, I'm not quite ready with my little words. Excuse me. I've done this before, but I should have it memorized by now. Okay, I call this meeting of the Prosper Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called. That notice this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Mr. Drew Wilburn would please lead our invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for allowing us to gather together to address the business of the Prosper Independent School District. Pray that you will grant us wisdom, that you'll grant us patience, that you will grant us understanding, and that you will allow us to address the matters at hand. This is our prayer. In the name of Jesus we pray.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay. We don't have anybody signed up for public comment tonight, so we will move right into information session.
Yes, Ms. Fulmer's going to start off with kind of our predictor preliminary budget. As you know, August will be kind of our final moment, but as we lead up through the summer months, certainly bringing to you all what's happening, especially as we're coming out of the 87th legislative session.
Here we go. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here to show you the preliminary budget for 21-22. It's hard to imagine that we're already here in June. I was going to say July. Things go pretty fast. And there's been so much work getting to this point today. This literally started the moment we adopted the budget last year. We talk internally that Prosper is a new district every 6 months. Our growth is so phenomenally fast. We have to course correct mid-year, every semester, and then as we plan for the next year, we always try to learn from changes in the prior year's budget and build those into as we move forward as well, taking into account all the new schools that we're opening, the legislative session, any other new wrinkle that might be looking us into the future, not just next year, but we're also looking 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, and again, this is really just an introduction to the budget process. July, we're going to know a lot more. We're going to take a deeper dive in July and then move into August for budget adoption. So we're going to talk a little bit about the legislative session and what we know so far. It just ended on May 31st. Current year projections, which is 2021. You have a financial presentation tonight as well, but really in the budget, we're going to look forward all the way to where we think we're going to end in August. Next year's budget so far, and then look at some of the larger items of expenditures like the employee health plans and the new personnel for growth, and then what comes after. So some of the big topics on school funding are going to be tax rate compression, the formula transition grant, if you remember that from House Bill 3 2 years ago, the fast growth allotment, and then the ESSER 3. Looking at tax rate compression, this is something that House Bill 3 2 years ago put into place, and I was a little nervous, I have to tell you. The state said that their funding formula was going to make up the difference. It's been a very long time since the state's funding formula ever made up the difference for anything. But throughout the year, we've seen our tax collection chart, line for line every month. It overlaid perfectly the prior year's tax collections, so it worked beautifully. The compression worked as designed. And so that was very much a win, especially last year when we adopted the budget. We didn't really have certified values. We had an estimate of certified number 1 because of COVID. We didn't get our certified until October, and that was past the compression deadline. So we really didn't know how it was going to work this year. It worked very well. The legislature, we weren't sure also when we adopted this last year, were they going to be able to continue this for the next biennium? That's a very expensive proposition for the state to make up tax rate compression statewide. It's funded for another 2 years. That's all we know so far. Every biennium when the state gets together, It's a new set of legislators and lawmakers, and they can make new rules, but we know for now our taxpayers have good news that it's in for another 2 years. We won't know until our certified values come in after July 25th what our compressed rate will be. It's actually set by TEA. So we'll get that information in August. The formula transition grant. Whenever House Bill 3 2 years ago came into effect, this was a very visible, recognizable number that we can say that Prosper ISD was harmed by House Bill 3 because of the formula transition grant. What that meant was if the new formulas do not give your school district as much money as you had previously, then they made up the difference. So we could see originally the first year it was $11 million to Prosper ISD. The other thing that it also did is it took away our benefit of the lag. We used to have prior year appraised values that went into your current year template. That was great news for growing value districts, which most districts in Texas were, because that growth didn't count into your funding formula, and so it was additional revenue to the district to help you with things like inflation. The electricity goes up, you have costs that go up. It really helped with that because the formulas in and of themselves are very static. House Bill 3 2 years ago took away the benefit of the lag, and that you could see that very visibly in our budget the last 2 years. Our first year they removed it, we were a $7 million deficit. Previously, Prosper was able to keep pace with the balanced budget. $7 million deficit. The next year, $13.9 million deficit. So you can very easily see that the benefit of the lag to Prosper was about $7 million annually. So the formula transition grant was a saving grace. We needed it. A lot of districts needed it. It turned out that it cost the state a lot more money than they expected. House Bill 3 benefited some districts, but it really did not benefit as many districts as they thought it would. A lot of districts are very dependent, and you can see it expires at the end of 2023. So there's a lot of angst going into this. We have some good news coming out of the legislature. Part of House Bill 1525, you probably heard of the House Bill 3 cleanup bill, so to speak. That's how it was sort of phrased in the press. So part of this that was passed really at the last minute, it was a good surprise for us. It funds school districts now. It changes the way the fast growth allotment is funded. So now districts are funded of their enrollment growth, not ADA. That's very important. That's good news. Average daily attendance is always lower than enrollment. So it funds school districts statewide on enrollment over a 6-year window. So Prosper ISD's growth from 15-16 to 2021 was our highest growth period. So this is very good news for Prosper ISD. I do know from looking at the runs that it's using enrollment at the PEAMS snapshot date, which is mid-October. That's not our highest every year, but when you look at a rolling average, it makes up the difference eventually. So it has a tiered structure in there, which is intended to help districts, even districts that aren't growing very fast. It looks to me like this is the benefit of the lag sort of catch-up adjustment to let districts get more money as they grow to cover costs of things. Of course, Prosper ISD is in the top 40% of growth. I did double check. I know that seems obvious, yes, but I did double check. We're in the top, right? Prosper ISD has the second largest growth in the state of Texas. We're right behind Katy ISD and right just a little bit ahead of Frisco as far as the fast growth allotment goes, as we see here. So this year it's capped at $270 million. So the amount that we get will most likely be prorated. I mean, they'll shave it down a little bit, and $320 million in the years following. So one of the things that we're going to be looking at between now and August is when we know our number for fast growth allotment, how much will the district feel comfortable budgeting for recurring expenses on a rolling basis? Because it's a rolling amount, it's not one-time monies, but if it's on a 6-year window, if you have a 1-year blip in enrollment, let's say you open a charter school, there's something that happens unexpectedly, well, that 1-year blip will carry forward then for 6 years. So maybe we budget on a lower percentage. We just will know and be very, be explain whatever we're doing as far as our revenue budget moving forward. But it's just so new, we didn't really have any time to plan for it before the legislature adopted it, but it's very good news for Prosper and for our budget. The budget that you're going to see later on does not include the fast growth allotment because it's just too new. We just didn't want to overpromise something and then have TEA say, no, wait a minute, sorry, we've changed our minds. ESSER 2 and 3. This is the federal not transition funds, but the federal supplement that we heard about a lot on the news that states got billions and billions of dollars. Well, it took a long time for the Department of Education and TEA to figure out how to flow it to districts. There was a lot of news about this back in April and May, give school districts the money, et cetera. So when ESSER 3 first came out, and I apologize, I was going to write down what ESSER stands for. It's Every Student Succeeds Act. It's really to make sure that kids are up to pace after the COVID period, to make sure that school districts that weren't open all last year can open successfully. Prosper ISD didn't have some of the struggles that other states have had, but we all have children, especially those that have moved here, that have deficits and really need additional support, and then this provides the funding for that. However, it was mandated by Department of Ed that was based on our Title I funding. Prosper ISD gets in a lot of school children that don't necessarily qualify under the Title I methodology, but they still have needs and still need to grow. So our initial allocation is $495,000, which doesn't even come close to recognizing the needs of Prosper. If you've seen some of the other school districts' amounts, these were very large amounts that they were receiving. The state legislature passed, again, very much at the last minute, an ESSER 3 supplement, which is very unusual for legislative action to pass federal funds. You can already see this is a complicated maneuver that we're talking about. But what it did is, and it actually sort of states there, districts that did not receive much, if any, funding under ESSER 3. We know some districts that received no funds, but all districts had supports they needed to provide. It set a floor, really. The allocation is $208 per enrollment for 2022 and 2023. So what we don't know yet is, are they going to wait and fund that to school districts in 2023? Or are we going to get that information now? But this could be significant support for Prosper ISD. We just are in a waiting pattern to see how it's going to flow through and how many strings are going to be attached when they give it to us. But again, the budget tonight does not include any of the ESSER 3 or the supplement or the ESSER 2. These are excluded from all of our conversations for our general operating budget. The ESSER 2 allocation came out very recently. This was $220,000 to Prosper ISD. However, TEA says they're going to use it to offset any ADA hold harmless. And you're like, Annette, you've used a lot of phrases this time. You haven't mentioned that. The ADA hold harmless is intended for school districts during COVID that saw significant enrollment reductions because of COVID. There are 150,000 school children statewide that just disappeared.
Not in Prosper, though.
Not in Prosper.
They didn't disappear. They're here.
They did not. Prosper's
Showed up.
enrollment exceeded pre-COVID projections by over 400 students. So school children from statewide and also from out of state flocked to Prosper ISD for a number of significant reasons. So we did not have the revenue pressure that many, many other districts did. But the ADA hold harmless, if TEA says that we qualify for that, will also help us with our revenue current year. But they're going to use our ESSER 2 allocation to offset that so the state can fund it. So just want to make sure that you recognize that we've got a lot of acronyms being thrown around and a lot of different fiscal years that we're talking about at the same time with the federal funds. But the interplay is very important. And as we go along, we'll make sure that we update you and tell you how they're fitting together. So this is a very busy spreadsheet. This is just the top portion. This is just the revenue projections. Now, what this does is it does a lot of things simultaneously. It shows the current year budget side by side with our projected budget so far. It shows our actuals as of May 31st. Those numbers match the financials report for this month. And then we see our projected current year through August 31st. And one of the things about the projected is we use a forecasting tool monthly called Fivecast, and we put our budget in there and we put all of our actuals in there, and it uses a 5-year historical expenditure by category by month to help us see, are we on track month by month, year to date? And so we also use that to project where we're going to end the fiscal year. So this is the second year we've been using it. The first year we had it in play, it was during COVID, and unfortunately it wasn't a good measure. So this year we have a full year, and we're able to see where we're going current year to make sure we have, if we have to course correct, then we do it also in next year's budget. So if we look at our tax collections for next year, we're projecting $117 million in tax collections, up from $107 million projected. That is because even with tax rate compression, the value increase is there to offset, so you get an overall revenue increase. The state funding increase is also there because our enrollment projection is going to go up. If we were projecting flat enrollment and tax collections went up, you would see a corresponding decrease in state funding to make that revenue flat. That's how the formulas work. And so we're really not adjusting our prior period tax collection percentages or our local revenue. Our local revenue includes a $1 million reduction in interest earnings projection. We just really haven't seen the interest rates come back up like I thought we might, and so we've had to lower the revenue for that, which is disappointing for operations, to say the least. Federal revenue, that's our Max Shars program, and we're just not anticipating this next year that we're going to see an increase in that funding. If we do, then as you see current year, we have $1.1 million we've received year to date, but there's murmur that they're going to change how they're funding some things, maybe put some more strings attached on those, so we don't want to over budget and project on that. We look at our student enrollment as an assumption for the budget. Last year we budgeted for 19,300 students, which was a significant increase over the prior year. We've actually gotten in 19,700, 400 over projected. So next year we're projecting 21,700, which is in effect 2,400 from budget of last year. So when you're looking at the budget to last year, budget of this next year, think of that as a 2,400 student change in where we were at. So we put student ADA on here, and also WADA. WADA is weighted average daily attendance. That is, when you look at your state funding formulas, it takes your ADA and it weights it by your student special populations to come up with your weighted average ADA for funding. It's one of those acronyms that really is only important if you're using the state funding template. Total revenue projections, $19.6 million over the prior year, $189 million. We add in athletics. We've kept athletics revenue static, even though we're going to increase our student enrollment. We just want to make sure that we're using conservative budgeting. And our TRS on behalf is a book entry. You'll see a matching expenditure. So it's in there. It does increase your total revenue and total expenditure, but it doesn't affect the bottom line or operations at all.
As we get closer to knowing about those other two sources, the ESSER and the, what was the other one you talked about at the very beginning?
1525.
Yeah, that's right. Will you build those in, or are we just going to leave those out of the entire budget process?
My plan, will take direction for Dr. Ferguson, of course, but the plan is to build them in, but in a very conservative way.
Okay.
It looks a lot better when she puts them in.
I was going to say, what's the difference?
It looks a lot better when we put them in. We just don't want to overpromise or even set us up for a funding cliff that might be sort of self-inflicted in 22-23 or 23-24. So what we'd like to do is show the 6-year revenue projection, then take that out another 3 years, see what we believe that our enrollment will be for a 6 years rolling period, and then maybe have the discussion, would it make sense maybe to budget 2/3 of this or something like that, just to make sure we have a buffer, 75%. Knowing full well that when we have our revenue projection, if we adopt a deficit budget, we know how conservative we are and why that's the case. So on the expenditure projections here, we notice over the projected column at August 31, this does not include any of the ADA hold harmless revenue. It wouldn't affect any expenditures, that would be a revenue. So current year, our adopted budgeted deficit was at 14.2. That's really 13.9 plus our purchase order rollovers of 300,000. So we project at this moment that we're going to have 10.9 results of operations that would come out of our general operating fund balance. And in addition to that, we have our one-time uses that the board's approved for $12,250,000, $10 million for capital outlay, 2.2 for the Mayhard property. And then you'll also have an agenda item tonight that would ask the board for approval of $4.9 million to pay off a loan early so that we have interest savings. So those are some of the things that you have results of operations, and outside of that are those two items. We have projections for 21-22 on the expenditure side. We're projecting that we will save about $1 million on the payroll. We budget 100% of salaries. Some organizations or even school districts might not budget 100%, but we feel it's the conservative way to do that. We know that we are not going to spend 100% of our salaries because on a rolling basis, we will have vacancies. You'll have vacancies at the beginning of the year, even in the middle of the year. And so that's not something that we will ever spend 100% on. So projected, lowered that by $1 million. We also are always looking at our budget and to see where we have maybe somewhere we can achieve some savings. Have we over budgeted in substitutes, health insurance, etc.? So you'll see we brought forward the projection for next year. It's a little bit lower than it was in the budget for prior year. Always trying to make sure that we can really dial down the deficit budgeting as much as possible. $16 million is a very large number for increase for growth. We're opening 2 elementary schools. And remember, the budget is increasing 2,400 students and the staff that goes with that. So we'll show you on some charts coming up where that $16 million is spread out. And compensation increases, $3.5 million. It's kind of a scary number, but when we're looking at next year, the school district is going to have over 2,500 employees. Which is, it's just amazing. The growth and the speed of it is warp speed. We look at the non-payroll projections, $33 million for a total budget of expenditures of $205 million. We have our athletics the same as prior year. We really didn't touch athletics budgeting for next year. And your on behalf book entry, $216 million. So the budget, very preliminary as presented, is a $16 million budgeted deficit. One of the reasons that we wanted to show this is if we look at our trajectory from the current year lag that we've lost, 7 million, 14 million, the natural progression with this growth would have been 21 million deficit. So since last year, Dr. Ferguson and all of the team have been working to identify ways that we could really tighten down the budget, make sure that we're staffing for needs, of course, and make sure that this is not a $20 million deficit. So the $16 million is a large number, and the legislature did some great things, but this was a lot of hard work to get it down to $16 million, and so we're very glad that the state was going to come through and give Prosper what we need, because we couldn't have kept going like this. No district could have.
Well, and one of the impacts I think we have to always be mindful of, which is why I appreciate what Ms. Fulmer and her team are doing, is we're going to hit what I refer to as the trifecta year in 2024 again, when you hit an elementary, middle, and high. And yes, we have the bonding capacity to do that, but then you have to pay the people working inside of those buildings, which that's just astronomical amount of staff, because even in elementary, we're about, $3.5 million just to staff an elementary. So you take an elementary, middle, and high, and then you look at that impact on the budget. So really trying to do that work now to really tighten things down and really get us for a huge amount of growth moving forward, thinking about how many employees we'll have by 2024, 2030, how many students will be here. So they've done just a phenomenal job of really digging down into the details that won't impact the classroom teachers' work, but how do we kind of tighten behind the scenes? Because the last thing that we want to do is hurt our culture or our teachers feeling like that they can't do the great work that they do in the classroom every day.
Okay, a little bit deeper dive into some of the employee benefits that the school district offers. So in the employee health plans, this is a chart that we show every year to show the number of employees that are taking health insurance in the district. And so the the Active Care Primary and Active Care HD, those are right at the same cost per employee. And the Active Care HD was, I think, a little bit more offer as far as the coverage. And so you see a lot of positions. That was new last year. A lot of employees went to that one. Active Care Primary Plus, and then the Active Care 2, that one has been closed for new enrollees for a number of years. TRS has closed that down. It is a very high cost to employees. So that one, we're not going to see any more on that moving forward. And Scott and White HMO is only a few years old, and so I think the cost of it was probably more cost prohibitive, why we saw a lot of people going to the Active Care HD. In the budget for next year, so these are some of the costs of the employees per plan. You see we have a tiered contribution structure in Prosper ISD. So that's one of the things too that we've done as an employee benefit to our employees. It's very hard sometimes to attract employees to various school districts. Prosper does not have that problem, and we want to make sure that the people that we have, we keep supporting them with these health plans as one of the many benefits that we have in the budget. When we look at the new personnel, we show this one by campus. Some of the losses there are for the two new elementary schools that are opening and the changing of attendance boundaries. So we've split Reeves Elementary into two separate pie chart items. When we looked at this originally, I said, it's going to be hard to explain why Reeves has 90 new employees and Bryant does not. So the pre-K program, the full day pre-K, that's moving over to Reeves. That's very exciting. And so that one is shown separately. And then Reeves and Bryant, the two new schools, that's the lion's share. We also have special education in the school district. One of the things about the two high schools to remember is that when we opened Rock Hill last year, we knew we had staffing inefficiencies, so to speak. You open a high school, when we opened it with all 4 grades, that is a great way to build efficiency in staffing as far as cost per pupil. However, we were probably somewhat overstaffed by formula at both campuses, because when you open with all 4 grades and it's brand new, you just have a very small senior class, small junior class, and those are the staffing will grow with the students. So what you're seeing here is also the benefit of some of that prepaying last year for some high school staffing. And again, the cost chart that you remember seeing before, $16 million for the new growth, the department support, and the campus. So where do we go from here? We're still receiving post-legislative guidance daily. After the meeting tonight, I'm driving to Round Rock to make sure I'm in person for an all-day training on what the legislature did and make sure that we get as much information as current as possible. Some of the ESSER 3 supplement especially, that one, there's not a lot out there at the moment, and so that also could be very important for Prosper ISD to learn what is the latest on that one. We're going to be refining the budget estimates. The demographer very recently did not increase the enrollment projections, which was good for staffing. But if they come back, we may have to pivot again mid-year and our projections for expenditures. The next budget presentation is July 19th. Certified values, we're anticipating those on July 25th, which is the legal date they have to be certified to us. And then things move very quickly in my department after that. We move very swiftly from certified values to publication of the tax rate notice to tax rate compression and adoption of the budget. That was a lot of information.
It's great information, though.
It was great. Grateful that we had the packet to look at in advance, too. That was helpful. Thank you.
Ms. Fulmer, do you mind going back, I guess, to that one? I just wanted to make a comment on this one, I guess to both you and to Dr. Ferguson, particularly for the special education line item. I guess earlier in the year, there were some parents, I guess, in the special education community who were expressing concerns about staffing. And so I just wanted to point this out or highlight this my personal appreciation for what's taking place on this particular slide. The 27 new staff members, 27 out of the 245, if my math is right, that's like right at 11%. So just wanted to say thank you for what's happening there. Even in comparison, it looks like 55 for New Elementary at Bryant, 54 for Reeves, and the 27 is right at half of that. So just wanted to say thank you for what's taking
Dr.
place on
Hickey
the
gets a
line.
lot of
Dr.
credit
Hickey.
too. She likes to come up and say, I need another position, and she won't leave until I grant it. So she's very committed to making sure she has exactly what she needs. So she really gets all credit for that.
Good deal. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
Great.
Very nice presentation.
Very nice.
One of the items that we like to show at the July presentation is also the growth by special population area compared to surrounding districts as well. And again, whenever we try to look at stuff and see where we need to modify or course correct special education, the enrollment growth in that is always just above anybody else. There's a reason that they're drawn to Prosper, and that's Dr. Hickey and her staff. So thank you.
Amen.
Very good.
Okay.
All right, any more questions for Ms. Fulmer? Because she'll be back. She'll be a
She'll be back
return
in a
guest
few
this
minutes.
evening. So. And on the heels of what she just brought to you, we had, I guess I'll talk about this first. So I wanted to bring back to you, because a couple months ago at a board meeting, I brought to you our in-school suspension numbers, and we were doing a side-by-side comparison. And if you'll remember, that was part of that disproportionality report. So I wanted to give you an overview of how we ended the school year when we're looking at those numbers and then what's happening. And you can see we've made some significant changes, obviously, in the way that we're disciplining students, especially when we look at students being placed in in-school suspension, which takes them directly out of instruction, which is where we never want to be. And you can see that the numbers were a lot higher. And I'm really proud of what our high schools have done specifically to really make a drastic difference in how they're addressing students and working with them through the different issues that they're faced with. So I know there's a higher level of communication and connection when they're working with those students and really trying to commit to get them back in instruction versus being pulled out of instruction. So I wanted to make sure you all saw that.
Very good.
And then we have our board update of our new facilities. So we have Mike and Janie Reeves, which, as you know, that was our late adoption to be able to get approval to build that building, but they are moving along very quickly to make sure and ensure that we're able to open in August. So Ms. Moss will be the principal, and she has done a fantastic job of hiring and making sure that we're staffed and ready to go, and really trying to do her due diligence. So the minute we get that certificate of occupancy, they are in and ready to hit the ground. So, but you can see the interior there coming along very nicely. I love talking about Mike and Janie Reeves too. Every time I do a new employee orientation, I'm always talking about the story of Mike and Janie Reeves, really to connect our new employees to the traditions and really the sense of community that we have in Prosper ISD. You can see the teal color coming along there. It's pretty and bright. Still some work to do, but we are almost there. The gym, obviously a little more work than the usual. So Mrs. Jerry Bryant, actually we took over the certificate of occupancy, and Ms. Newman began today in the building.
Wow.
So we are in, and so we're I want to also give a compliment to the town of Prosper and to Dr. Bradley. Just a great working relationship between our two entities to really ensure that we were coming in. I think this is the earliest we've ever gotten a certificate of occupancy ever in Prosper ISD, and I really give a lot of credit. There's been just a really phenomenal effort on the town of Prosper's front to really figure out how can we best serve one another as we're serving our community. And you can see very much looks like Windsong Elementary. It's beautiful. And I also talk about the story of Mrs. Jerry Bryant, because Paul Bryant made it very clear to me that Mrs. needed to be on the building so no one thought his mother was a man. And I'm like, got it. We'll get that squared away.
Sweet Jerry Bryant.
Yes. So you can see beautiful, kind of that violet color to go along with Rushing, and then obviously the colors over at Windsong too.
Beautiful. Ready for ribbon cutting?
Yes, we are. And that is scheduled, and our principals are ready to have a normal ribbon cutting. Okay, so that takes us in. Any questions about construction? I didn't give you a chance to ask about any of those facilities. I know it's crazy, but in Prosper, it almost feels like an off year when we have just 2 elementaries to open, as crazy as that sounds. So, but here we are. So this then leads into what Ms. Fulmer was talking about, as well as why we need facilities and we need more staff. So we just had a recent meeting with our district demographer, and you can see that we are ranking #1 in Region 10 on enrollment trends. So you can see that growth is something that is here to stay for quite some time. So I wanted to make sure I showed that to you. And then also looking at the 10-year forecast, this is something that I always share with our new employees too, so that they know exactly what we're in for. I want to draw your eyes over to the 19,074. That was this year, and we actually ended the year at 19,708 students. But if we go just 10 years out, we are at 42,979 students in just a matter of 10 years, which is just unbelievable when you think about what's happening in this district. But I would not want to be with any other school board nor any other team to get through this massive growth. And really, what I always tell our new employees, this may be overwhelming, it may look scary, but what I see in front of me are opportunities. And so we have to always look at the growth of the changes that come with the opportunities of the people who are moving and choosing Prosper ISD, because they could literally live anywhere in the world, and they chose us. So I wanted to make sure you saw what was happening at the elementary level. You can see the 21-22 school year that we're coming up on. That's 11,162 students represented at elementary. And then you can see the numbers just going up from there. And then our 10-year forecast for our secondary campuses, you can see all the way out to 2030, 2031, but just in this upcoming school year of 21-22, 1,072, which is a middle school. Another one right there, just the number alone. And then our high schools, you can see 714 with our change there, and 14.8% growth. So great job, school board and Prosper ISD staff and parents, of getting the word out there about our great district, because people want to be here, which is fabulous. Any questions about any of those reports or information? Okay, ready to move into the consent agenda?
Yeah, I think the only thing on the consent agenda is the minutes, and then the approval of the enrollment update. That's the construction update, that sort of thing, right?
Yes, sir. And actually, I need to add one more, because we did have our board retreat last
right.
Friday, and so we do have the minutes from that meeting that'll also need your approval.
Okay. That's an item that needs a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent
Thank you,
agenda.
Deborah. Second? All right, thank you very much. All in favor? Great, thank you. All right. Did you get Dina as the second?
So
Okay.
So there were 555 pages in this board packet for the board members to read through, and a big bulk of that was the consideration that they needed to give to the student handbooks, along with the student code of conduct, which includes the dress code. And I have provided all of that information, and I apologize for the length, but certainly very important, because those are our guiding documents to make a lot of decisions when we're looking at what needs to happen within our schools. I gave you kind of a brief overview, and this was also public out to everyone that wanted to get in to look at the agenda. This was an item that I gave view to the public, where we could really see what was happening. Just as a reminder, we received the model handbook from the Texas Association of School Boards, and so they provide that to us. So there's not a lot of freedom of what we're doing within that model handbook. We go in and can change a few things here or there. Certainly there's updates, and we'll probably be looking at another update because of the 87th legislative session, because there's always changes that come. So probably around July, possibly August, we may have some more changes to the handbook that we'll update. With your approval of the handbook and the dress code, we will include that in InfoSnap for registration, because we've been keeping our old documents in there because we opened a registration in April for families, so we wanted to make sure that they could see what our guiding documents were. One significant change that you'll see, because our dress code last year included mask, and that is nowhere in any of our language, in any of our handbooks or code of conduct, anything that has to do with anything. We're looking forward.
Looking forward.
Looking
Very good.
forward.
Masks are not mentioned, and it does not have any verbiage about masks being optional or anything. There is nothing in there about masks.
No. So you can see
Like
any.
it was before.
It
Yes,
was
it
before, and
was.
it's all gone now.
No, I mean, like it was before COVID,
Yes,
Yeah.
before,
just like it was before the.
when the world
dark
was
days.
normal.
Right.
Yes, before the 15 months of a great time for us all.
Okay, so I have a new board member question.
Okay,
So we'll vote on this tonight.
yes.
If it's approved, what does that timeline look like? As far as this being distributed to parents, you mentioned being loaded to InfoSnap, what does that timeline look like?
That's tomorrow.
Okay.
So as soon as I get your approval, our communications department will be updating our website,
Okay.
and then Ms. McGlon and her team will update that within the registration process. Because I know there were some questions with parents. They were concerned about registering their
Right.
children if there were going to be masks because of the old language. But this is very typical. This is what we do every June, because we have to wait until we get the model handbook from the Texas Association of School Boards.
Okay.
So nothing new on that
And
end.
in reading all of this, I've read it all several times, and just to make sure that I, in my mind, didn't have any questions to ask. And it is very clear. I feel like it was very concise and very, like, crystal clear, the verbiage in it. So I think
Good.
that's a good thing, at all levels, secondary,
Yes.
high school, middle school, and elementary.
Well, and one change that we did, sometimes in the past, we've done kind of a dress code that fits a lot of different settings. And so in working with the principals, how do we go about getting an elementary dress code, a middle school dress code, and then a high school dress code? Because you do see variations between those levels, because certainly what's needed at the high school is not always needed as a mandate at the elementary level. So we split those out
Good.
this go around, and those are included in your information that you have.
Good.
Dr. Ferguson, is there any need to, and this is really piggybacking on Pastor Wilborn, but is there any need to send this out, the dress and grooming standards, as a freestanding piece to everyone?
We certainly
I don't know if
can.
that's
There's nothing,
something
because it's
that-
going to be public, so if you all want that blasted out, we
know.
can certainly do that.
It is
Yeah.
on the website.
Well, we've never done that before, have we?
No, we haven't, and I did. I don't know that we've done this in the past to make it viewable by everybody that wanted to get into when the board agenda got posted, but literally code of conduct.
I think they'll be able to do
Handbook.
it if they want it pretty easily. Yeah.
Okay, any questions?
Any more comments or questions on agenda item 7A? How fun to not have anything to do with masks anymore.
Yes.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the student handbook.
I will happily make the motion.
All right,
to
Mr.
approve
Beavers makes the motion.
handbook.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jana. All in favor? Here we go.
7B is a standing agenda item that we have every year, and this is for expedited waivers. So just for your reminder, this is early release, because we do have a few early release dates that sit on our calendar, and so that gives us some flexibility there. Modified schedule for state testing, and then our foreign exchange student waiver. One thing that I want to point out, because I think we've had some questions about this in the past about our foreign exchange students. So we're looking at a waiver of 5 or more per high school. Okay, so that means Rock Hill could have 5 or more foreign exchange students, and then PHS. As our numbers get tighter, we may pull back to the no more than 5, because there is that option with TEA. But right now, certainly want to have those opportunities for students and the enrichment that they receive when they're coming and studying abroad. And it's
Great.
great for our kids too. So, and then the Texas, or the teacher data portal, and then timeline for accelerated instruction, although I've heard rumor of the Student Success Initiative being a thing of the past. But we'll go ahead and get ourselves covered with your approval to make sure in case the state decides to pull a fast one on us, we're ready to go.
Great.
Not that they ever do that.
Okay, need a motion for 7B.
I'll make a motion.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Pastor Woodward. All in favor? Great.
Okay, moving on to business, so we'll have Ms. Fulmer come back to
Come
give
back
us our
before you start your
financial
long drive.
investment. Yes.
Thank you. So looking at May 31st, we kind of skipped over May a while ago. We looked at the original budget, where we're going to be at August 31st and next year. So current year to date, we're looking at an investment portfolio. This is all funds. We have $237 million prior year to $37 current year. So we really are right where we were same time last year as far as our total investment portfolio, which is really cash on hand. So if we look at the general operating fund, we're at 59% of our overall portfolio of $237 million. If we look at the breakdown by financial institution, we've worked really hard to limit the amount in tax pool. This was just trending to be the very lowest of the earning pools. Even though we use it, it's where we bring in our tax collections. It's a very important pool, as is Lone Star. Lone Star, we always kept all of our bond proceeds there. And so it was a very good way for us to do a lot of housekeeping as far as internally paying large vendor payments through Lone Star, those kinds of things. We made a concerted effort in May to create new accounts at some of these others that have higher interest rates to just get some yield in there and earn some investment earnings on our bond proceeds as well as general operating fund. At May 31st, our weighted average yield for the overall portfolio is higher than prior month at 0.07. You can see the one-year treasury, though, is at a 0.05. So we had a little bit of success on a 1 month of just ticking it up a little bit over a one-year treasury. And a treasury is considered basically a no-risk investment, which is why we measure to that, the 30-day treasury and the one-year treasury. The days to maturity, if we look at our Texas term, a fixed rate, we've got a 27 days in there, yielding us a 0.13, $11 million in that. We have, I believe half of that matured on June 2nd. So we're going to have to go out and capture some more of those yields. Usually a 6 month is a good time to go out and just get a little bit more yield without sacrificing liquidity. If we do our comparison by funds, this is the general fund only, $143 million prior year, $140 current year. And looking at that one, so the bond proceeds as well, those have gone down after the Rock Hill, the construction of that was such a large amount. We're really tracking along very well. You'll see if we sell our proceeds in August or September again, then that will go up and then we'll see that track down as well. Looking at revenue, general fund only, $142 million prior year through May 31st. $163 million current year through May, 14% increase. And in the federal funds, those are just our general fund only, the MaxSHARS portion. That doesn't include any of the other federal funds. General operating revenue, budgeted $178 million, collected year to date, $163. 91.7% completed year to date. We're slightly behind prior year, but are more and more reliant on state funding, so this small percentage does not concern me for our performance year to date. Total tax collections, we talked about tax rate compression. This is the overlay that I was talking about with the tax collections by month being right there as they were prior year. 99.2% collected year to date compared to 103%. For budget, what I have done on the budget for next year is used a 95% collection rate. It's still conservative, but I noticed that our year-to-date collection percentage was running behind prior year, so I want to make sure that we don't overestimate that. In theory, the state funding will match, but we just want to be sure that we don't say that we're going to over collect and then our revenue projections are off moving forward. It's just one of those ways how we're trying to link the current year budget to the next year's forecast. Looking at ag rollback collections, we're at $1.1 million. Again, we don't budget for these. They're things that happen that you can't predict that they're going to happen. It's based on land sales within the school district. Expenditures by major object, general fund only, $119 million, $143 million year to date. And that includes the transfer out of $12.2 million. So that's why that looks a little bit larger percentage than what you would normally see. Year to date, expenditures by major object, percent complete last year, 75.1%, current year 74.7%. The 12.2 is excluded from these charts. So you see we're tracking along very nicely as we would expect. The athletics fund, cash flow year to date, $121,000, which is very strong for our athletics during COVID, so that was a good surprise. We're going to keep those budgets, as we mentioned, steady for next year. The food service program, currently $446,000 year to date. We're transitioning to a new food service operator, and the way we're going to be billed for future contracts is per meal only. So next summer will look very different than this summer. We're still going to have some settle-up coming in. We'll have a June invoice from our current provider. And then in July, we'll only be billed if we have July meals of some type, maybe caterings or such. And then we won't see any billings until August startup for student meals. So really, our revenues are going to begin to track perfectly with the expenditures for food service. Debt service fund, $19 million, cash flow year to date, and we're going to be seeing that increase until our payments happen August 15th every year. Every year we have 2 payments for debt, February 15th and August 15th. Elementary school 13, Reeves, we have total expenditures 79.5% year to date, and the POG contract $19.6 million. Comprised, total contract amount 24.6, and Bryant 93.6% year to date. And that probably won't change very much. There are holdback percentages and such, so that needle won't move very much until we get into the school year, most likely. That concludes our May 31st. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Ms. Fulmer. All right, I need a motion to approve the financial investment tax report for May 2021.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Deb. Second? Second from Jenna. All in favor? Very nice.
Very good. We do not have
No
any.
budget amendments?
No, sir. No
Great.
budget amendments this month.
Elementary 15.
So Dr. Bradley should be making his way to talk
Yes.
about elementary number 15.
Good evening. 2 projects tonight to talk about, and so we're going to talk about elementary 15 first, and then high school number 3. But it's hard to talk about them individually because the market that we're in is obviously pretty crazy, and so every day is a new news story about shortage of this or increasing prices of this or inflation, and so it's been an interesting couple of months as we have worked on these projects. But this first project, Elementary 15, which you know will go in the Star Trail neighborhood, is scheduled to break ground hopefully pretty quickly. And Elementary 15, we put it out a month ago or a couple of weeks ago for bid. This is a CSP project, so we had the opportunity for multiple contractors to bid on this elementary. I was pleased to see that we had 7 different contractors submit bids, and as I'm sure you know, submitting a bid on a project like this is not an easy thing. It takes a lot of time and effort to put together, have an estimating crew, and come up with a number. We have hopefully gotten a little wiser over the years of exactly how we go about putting these out, and worked with Huckabee. Josh and Joe are here tonight to try to make sure our documents are clear and the contractors know what they're bidding. And so we had 7 contractors bid, and as the results show on that sheet, the low bid of this project is Pogue Construction, who we're obviously very familiar with. But what I'm asking for tonight is an approval to award this contract to Poe Construction for a price not to exceed $25,195,900. So that includes a couple of alternates. We put these alternates in for different reasons. One of these alternates is about the cameras that we use, our security cameras, and so we actually have 3 different cameras that our technology department has spec'd now, and so it's interesting, even different contractors have different prices on each one of these, and so we put all 3 of them out there to see which one would be there. And then the largest alternate in this project, it was $144,000 surcharge to move from bar and joist to wide flange steel beams. And I will confess that while I have tried to learn as much as I can about construction in the last couple of years, I have never been a steel expert, okay? But I feel like in the last couple of months, we've all kind of become steel experts, and still nobody knows what's going on with the market. So the reason I wanted to point this out to you is that I'm telling you right now that to go to wide flange steel beam in this project would be an upcharge of $144,000, but we were doing that to see if it might help us on schedule. Because the problem is just getting a hold of bar and joist. There's a bunch of reasons for that. The guys from Pogue and Huckabee could probably speak to it even better than I. But there's a lot of reasons why that's going on, and so this, oddly enough, would show a surcharge to go to steel beam. In the project we're fixing to talk about, it's over $1 million in savings. So that speaks to the fluctuation of the market right now. What's going on in the market is, I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say, I'll turn back and look at Derek and the guys from Pogue, I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that steel prices are changing by the day, right? And sometimes multiple times a day. And so it's just been a little bit crazy. And so the prices of concrete and steel are changing nonstop. And so we don't know that we're going to exercise this alternate to use steel beam instead of bar and joist, but I'm asking for your approval for that because, frankly, we're just a little worried about the schedule of this project. And that's not a Pogue thing, that's a every vendor on this sheet thing. Bar and joist you can't go vertical and build a structure without them. And we approve this contract tonight. I assure you they're going to sign the contract for steel tomorrow morning. And still it may be 6 months before we can get those things on site. And so I'm a little bit worried about this project in the sense that we might be able to pour a foundation earlier than we ever have before, and then we may be sitting there looking at admiring that foundation for a month or two, waiting on the materials to go vertical. And frankly, there's just nothing we can do about it in the moment. We have tried, and just so you know, I had conversations with other construction companies, not named Pogue, to verify that this was the situation globally, and that is the situation we find ourselves in. And so I'm recommending Pogue for this project. Certainly, they have built this prototype numerous times before, and so they know what they're doing. I feel confident that even with a challenging schedule, they'll be able to accomplish it. We're experiencing a challenging schedule right now at Elementary 13, and everything's on track. And this one might, because of the steel situation, look a little more like that than we would want. But again, that's the situation we find ourselves in, unless one of you has a bar and joist provider that you know about that we don't. And if so, we'll be happy to entertain that conversation quickly. So that's my recommendation to you tonight, but I will certainly try to answer any questions, or if you have any that I can't answer, I'll be more than happy to turn it over to these guys in the back of the room. And let you know, but just so you know, we have with us Sam Adams from Pogue, Ben Pogue, Brandon Colquitt, Derek Steinmeier, and Roby Bledsoe from Pogue, and then Josh Brown and Joe Tremblay from Huckabee are here with us tonight. And then, of course, Mr. Elledge, there he is, that is our Director of New Construction, is here as well. So if you have any questions I can't answer, I'll turn it over to them.
Any questions more?
I to, so is the structure just as safe since it's a different type of building practice? I mean, I don't know anything about this. So I'm assuming it is just as safe, just as strong. They're all nodding
Yes.
and looking.
If we
at
said
each
no,
other.
that would be an interesting meeting. No, it's,
I just kind of look back
You know,
there
this is-
because if it's no, we've got a problem.
Okay, so.
if it's no, we're changing construction companies.
So this is going on in the industry right now with school construction? Is this like a new norm kind of thing?
Roby, feel free to answer that if you want.
Well, even homes are 10 to 13 months out, so
I get it,
it's,
'cause we just built
everything's
the
extended.
structure And everything is on back order.
Good
so-
evening.
Hi.
So yes, very much so. It is an industry-wide issue right now with joist and deck. What we're seeing is there's several big projects that are going on right now. Amazon is building several headquarters as well as Tesla. And what that is doing, it is pulling just a tremendous amount of bandwidth from the joist and deck suppliers. And because of that, there's only a couple of people that you can get the joist and deck from. And those two facilities that I just mentioned are pulling a lot of that bandwidth. So yes, without a doubt, is an industry-wide problem. As far as the integrity of joists versus beams, they're very comparable. And I'm looking back at the design team back there, and I see a nod out of them. When we bid this alternate, and you'll see it as well in the high school, the two alternates were looked at in great detail by the design team. And essentially, we were presented with a one-for-one swap, where they had evaluated the structural integrity of both and made sure that the structure that was even below that could support changing to a beam instead of a joist. A beam, just to kind of give you a visual, a beam is solid steel, whereas a joist is a webbed product. So a beam is actually much heavier than a joist is. So in some ways, it's a beefier product than your joist, but it's comparable to answer your question.
Great. Other questions? I have a question from Dr. Brad, some questions for Dr. Bradley. So did we have anybody that you would have expected to respond to this proposal in this process that did not?
We had, I know we had another local construction company, Crossland, came to the bid session, so I thought they might submit, but they chose not to.
Okay.
There are certainly some other players in the construction industry that had bid our jobs in the past that did not show up this time. It's always interesting. I think in this industry, they're certainly lining up where their teams are already committed,
right.
What bandwidth they have to take on these jobs, and so they have to make those decisions. I will say that at least two of these construction companies reached out to, I mean, it's not, it's certainly not unknown that this district has $1.3 billion bond out there, and that getting a piece of that pie might be important for your company.
Right.
And so I've been to about all the meetings I want to go to with different construction companies that can promise us good things. And I had two of them say to me that they were going to be very aggressive on this bid. And so I'm taking them at their word that they were very aggressive on this bid, that they cut their margins and got where they thought they could be extremely competitive. And still, you see where the result landed.
Without having you to try to pretend you understand all these thinking that went into these bids, I'm just curious how that alternative two could cost $144,000 extra for Pogue. Somebody thought that was going to be 1.4 million, and somebody thought that was going to save us $775,000.
So I wish you
Any
could have been
idea
here
to speak
for
to
the
that?
bid meeting. As Joe was reading out the numbers, all of us are looking at each other going, that's weird.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I'll give you what I think I know about this situation, because as you look across that, it is very interesting. 149, 140, 141, 144. I'll tell you that the one that's a deduct, I think that's where they thought if we're going to swing and maybe hit a home run, we'll take a chance here. I think that also
some old beans laying
suggests,
around.
yeah, yes. I think it also suggests that the 144 number is probably right on the money.
Seems like it.
And the, what I'm gonna guess on the over $1 million one is either they just didn't wanna do it, which is always, you run into that sometimes here, or also they don't have as good a relationship with the steel companies that they're pulling from, because all of these guys are subject to just a couple steel providers.
Right.
They don't have a lot of options, and if they haven't had a great experience or haven't done a lot of volume, I would imagine their pricing is not as good.
Other questions? I know too, our friends at Pogue came a little bit low in the rubric on financials and the claims category. Can you talk about that?
Yes, so just so you know about that, what we ask our business department to do, which we haven't really done in the past, most of the time we just gave them a rubric and, hey, everybody could be a 10, everybody could be a 9. We asked them to rank this time.
Okay.
And so that is part of it. But I think the other thing was just Pogue is doing a lot of work, so they have a lot of assets and they have a lot of liabilities. And some of these companies are substantially smaller. Their balance sheets were healthy, but they also are not doing near the volume of work. And so that factored into it.
Good. Other questions or comments on elementary 15? Okay, well, we have a recommendation from our administration to select Pogue for the construction of elementary 15. It's on the table. Need a motion for that?
I'll make the motion to
Thank you,
approve.
Jana. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. All in favor? Okay, there we go.
And I also want to say that we appreciate the relationship very much.
Absolutely do.
Okay.
High
now-
School 3, here we go.
School 3, yeah, that was the appetizer.
Yes, another small project here. So on February 17th of last year, this board awarded CM at risk to Pogue Construction for 5 separate projects. It was elementary 13 and 14, which are obviously under construction right now. The retro to Rucker that we did last summer, where we increased the safety and security of Rucker Elementary. Middle School 5, which we have not obviously constructed yet or started yet, and then High School 3. So I just wanted to remind you that because, right, this is a different project. So what we just talked about was a hard bid project where everybody had to come in with a sealed envelope, and this is our price, and we awarded based on that, the rubric that was based in large part due to the price. This is a CM at risk project, and so last year we said, hey, on these larger projects, sometimes there's an advantage for us to lump projects together and give us an opportunity to get a better price. And so we had, I believe, 8 construction companies bid on that CM at risk package. And in that, they bid pre-construction services and they bid their percentage of profit or margin, if you will. And Pogue Construction won that. Out of the 8 construction companies that bid that, Pogue Construction won that. And so at that point, we entered into conversations with them about High School 3. Now, you might remember that a year ago, we thought we were already going to be under construction for High School 3. So Huckabee and the design team had prepared the documents for High School 3. We thought that last June we would be having this conversation and we would start constructing High School 3. Obviously, COVID happened last March. Everything changed a little bit. We got some disappointing numbers from the tax appraisal district, and we said, hey, we're not sure that we can bond this, and we weren't sure that 2,400 students were still going to show up. As you heard, they did. And so that didn't change. So what we did over the last year was we spent a lot of time going through those documents. I mean, in some ways, this was a gift to us. As frustrating as it was to not be able to start the project, it did give us time to really delve into the documents and make sure that we had what we wanted in High School 3. So I want to give some credit to Josh and Joe and their team at Huckabee. Lance Elledge and Mike Coker on our team spent a lot of time over the last year meeting with our CTE teachers, meeting with a bunch of people at Rock Hill High School and saying, hey, what did we get right? What would you change? Because I had the frustration, and I may have mentioned it to the board before, but there were some times as we were finishing the Rock Hill project, and a teacher would come in and say, why did we do it this way? And I go, we made that decision 3 years ago, right? On a building this big, we made that decision a long time ago. And so we spent, I know Joe and Mike Coker spent a ton of time meeting individually with our people to come up with some better documents to get what we needed. And then on January 27th, I called a meeting in this room. We knew that the world had changed a little bit via COVID. We weren't sure what was going to go on in the construction industry, but we knew that Rock Hill High School's GMP was $199 million, just under $200 million. And in the construction industry, it's kind of accepted that a 6% inflation rate is kind of what goes, and that actually bears out. In 2004, we built Folsom Elementary for $9.9 million. And if you added 6% every year, in 2021, that same elementary should cost $26,700,000. And so you see that 6% has held pretty steady. So if that was the case, we were going to be looking at $230 million for high school number 3, since it's 3 years since we started this. And so we met with the team in here, and I gave the kind of the edict to get this thing to $200 million, whatever we could do. And so the advantage to a CM at risk is that you have the contractor in the room with the architect, and you can have the discussions about what's a more cost-effective way to do this. And so since January 27th until last week, we have spent a lot of time, this team has spent a lot of time together, and while I wish I was here telling you that this only cost $170 million or that somehow I'm very proud of what this team has done to get what we thought was going to be 230, and then even 2-3 months ago, we were looking at $215 million. And we looked at every possible way. And so one of the things that went into this process is Pogue would call their subcontractors that we've used a lot and said, hey, what's your recommendation for saving money on this? What are some things that you would say? And so we talked about just a couple of quick examples. We talked about some things like there's this high school down the hallways, like Rock Hill and PHS, will have some pretty cool skylights that allow daylight into the area. And there were some things like, hey, if you just standardize the skylight size, it saves a lot of money. And you know, it was some easy changes like that. Easy for me to say, maybe not for the architects, right? They have to go back and redo it. But some things like that, we made a change from one tile to another tile, and it saved $500,000. And then what we talked about earlier, the $144,000 surcharge, I believe the team decided, hey, let's bid this alternate and see if we went with steel beam instead of bar and joist. Could that make sense? And just to give you an idea of how crazy the market is, we wouldn't have even had that conversation a year ago because steel beam would have been 4 times as much as bar and joist. But the bar and joist market had gone so crazy, these guys said, hey, well, what if we just bid that as an alternate? So we bid it as an alternate, and it saved $1.6 million to go to steel beam. And you're not seeing that on a lot of projects. Now, we talked about that earlier. I just want to point out, part of the reason why we believe that it would be a $144,000 surcharge on elementary 15 to go to steel beam is because the bar and joist guys realized they just lost out on several $1 million. It's noticeable when a $200 million project that was scheduled to use bar and joist said, we'll go with steel beam. That matters in the industry. We may not be as big as Amazon and Tesla, but we're not small potatoes here on a project this size. And so through that hard work and hours upon hours spent with this team, I'm asking tonight that you would approve this GMP of $200,520,903. That equates to $296 a square foot. Now that counts for everything, right? I mean, every concession stand, everything around, over 650,000 square feet. But the Rock Hill price per square foot was $295.
Wow.
So, we adopted the GMP at Rock Hill High School of $199 million. The actual cost was just under $193 million. just to be clear, to make sure everybody understands, as Pogue buys out this contract, with the contract that we have with Pogue dictates that as they buy out the contract, that if we in this GMP said that concrete was going to cost $24 million and they're able to get it for $23 million, that $1 million comes back to us, okay? And so there's savings in that. And so I'm asking you to approve a GMP tonight of just over $200 million. My sincere hope is that 3 years from now, when we begin to occupy this building, the actual cost of it was substantially lower than that. But certainly we have the team here. I will entertain any questions you have or certainly turn it over to them.
Can you give me the number again? 'Cause it's a little different than the number we have in the action, the board action.
Yes, it is. I apologize. It may have been, we've gone through a few iterations. It is $200,520,903.
903.
I want to get that $3 in there.
Got it. Got to get it
It's
on.
important.
All right, any questions for Dr. Bradley on high school 3?
Dr. Bradley, first of all, thank you for all the work that you put into this. When I saw the number last week and called you, I was, shocked, thinking everything that we know about construction around here and everything that we've seen in town, prices just go crazy. So the fact that you and your team got it down to that number is absolutely awesome. So thank you for all the work on it, and thank you, Josh and Joe, for personally talking me through some of this over the last 6 months' time, explaining to me what was going on. Somebody that has no clue about that stuff. You guys did an awesome job, and thank y'all for coming through on it.
Great. Other questions, comments?
I would like to just add one more thing, Mr. Bridges, just for the benefit of the group. Maybe a reminder to our community. We build these high schools large for a reason. And I think it always begs us to answer that question, because we're talking about 650,000 square feet. Frisco High School is in the neighborhood of 375,000 square feet. But the decision that this board made years ago was to basically build these career and tech centers in our high schools. And what that allows is more opportunities for our kids. So many districts have chosen to build one career and tech center and bus kids from multiple high schools to that career and tech center. And that works for them, and there's nothing wrong with that model. But this district chose years ago to build those CTE centers inside it. It makes our high schools substantially larger. But it also means that we have 2 broadcast journalism programs.
Right.
We have 2 culinary arts programs. We're not having to limit kids. And when high school 3 opens, we'll have 3 culinary arts programs and 3 broadcast journalism programs. And this high school does also expand on that. Our culinary kitchen here is going to focus more on a pastry chef model, so there's going to be some uniqueness to that. There's some woodworking in this high school that we don't have in our current 2 high schools. And we're also adding a print shop, which will be an awesome opportunity where our kids will get real life experience printing all kinds of materials, everything from business cards to t-shirts. And in our district, we won't be paying other people to print our business cards. We will order them and our kids will be getting the opportunity to do that. So I just think it's important to point that out, that there is we don't just build large high schools to make them big.
Yeah.
We do it because it provides more opportunity for our kids.
No, I appreciate you saying that. Anybody that's walked the halls of our high schools, particularly our newest one, there's a lot to be proud of.
Yes.
A lot to be proud of, a lot of ways to serve kids. That's fabulous. All right, if there's no more questions, I will entertain a motion on item 8D, the guaranteed maximum price bid for high school number 3.
I'd like to make a motion.
All right, Bill, second Dina, all in favor? There we go.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we have a maintenance tax note that was actually a series of 2013. I believe it was used for technology. Is that right, Ms. Fulmer? I think it was a purchase of that.
Yes, it was used for buses, portable buildings, technology, and some other capital outlay back in 2013. Originally $9.6 million issuance.
So the good news is, if we call this in, we're going to have, it's a $4.9 million price tag, and she was speaking about that, taking that out of the general operating fund to go ahead and pay that off, but it's going to be a cost savings of the $625,000, which will be, no, it was $684, wasn't it?
It
I
is
believe.
$684 of interest cost
Yes.
savings over the lifetime of the note if we go ahead and use fund balance.
684,
That's
450.
sitting there earning 0.003%.
Right.
So there's not that trade-off there. And this also helps the operating budget. So annually, the district budgets $800,000 for an annual payment on this loan in Function 71. And so if we go ahead and pay this note off, then our operating budget going forward won't have this note. And so it helps take some of the pressure off that you saw earlier for the operating budget. So the one thing I made myself a note is we met with our auditors for interim work recently, and this would normally have taken our Function 71, which is interest loan payments, off the general fund completely. However, there's a new GASB pronouncement. GASB would like us to put our copier leases now in Function 71. I'm only saying that not to confuse things, which of course it is, but when we see that in August, I could see you saying, wait a minute, we already paid off this note, why is there a line item? Don't worry, it'll just be our copiers.
What's our annual payment if we weren't to pay this, if we chose not to pay this off right now?
We could continue to still make the annual payment of $800,000 annually and not take the hit on the fund balance. That is an option that the district has, absolutely. One of the things that our financial advisor, Doug Witt, also mentioned is since this is a general operating note, it's not a bonded indebtedness, it's just through general operating funds, you can always sort of roll this back again if we feel that we have additional things that we need and we're like, you know what, we can always go out for another note and do the same thing again in the future if we choose to.
Yeah, good. And our finance committee met on this, talked about that, everybody was good, copacetic?
Pay it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely advantageous for us to go ahead and pay this off, and especially with the news that we're getting out of Austin and kind of looking at what's going to happen on the school finance front. It's a good time for us to move, and Mr. Witt was very much in favor of it.
Good. Okay, I need a motion for item 8E, possible action on a resolution calling the remaining notes to district's maintenance tax notes series 2013 for redemption.
I'll make the motion. Pay it off.
Thank you, Janet. Pay it off.
Pay it off.
Second? Oh, okay, I think I got Drew first. All in favor? Great.
So 8F, the next one that we have this is our TCG matching plan for our employees. And this is one of the things that we looked at and some lessons learned that we've seen from our neighbors and surrounding districts. So currently right now we have a $100 matching plan for our employees to be able to be a part of. Not all employees take it, but certainly have that opportunity to do that. As we started really digging down and looking with the finance department is where are the ways that we can make changes in order to really look at the sustainability, the financial impact. And one of the things that we were looking at was the matching plan. And as we started looking at comparison districts, they were not paying anywhere near that $100. And one thing we have to always keep in mind as a board is that not every employee is getting the benefit of this because they do not have to take it. Just like our benefits package, they don't have to take those. So not every employee is getting that return. So one of the things that we would like to recommend to you is that our employees who have left in the past, say they leave and they go to Frisco ISD and then they decide, hey, that wasn't a good idea, I think I want to go back to Prosper ISD, they were returning with the same $100 matching. And so one of the things we talked about is that if you leave and then you return, then you would come back in at a $50. We will not mess with our current employees. So current employees who have signed up for this program, they will be locked in and grandfathered into the $100 matching. And then any employees that we hire coming into this school year and beyond would be at $50. And we have to look at the cost savings. We're not going to get a return this year on that, but as we continue to grow and add more employees in, it will be a very sound financial move for us moving forward, and knowing too that we're not going to be compared against our other districts because we already were well above and beyond what they were doing.
The only thing I would add is part of the retention component of this is previously Prosper had opted to, if employees left, when they return, they would keep their previous contributions, even if they hadn't vested. So this is a 5-year vesting, and so to support the retention part, if they do leave and they come back, as Dr. Ferguson meant, they would start over, and the district contributions would would not count towards them. They would have to start over in their account as well if they weren't vested.
So no one, I think the main thing is no one's going to feel the impact, which is what I'd really task Ms. Fulmer and her team with, is whatever we do, there would not be an impact on our current employees. And so as we're bringing new employees, there's no difference felt, because we'll take care of those 2,300 that are sitting here already with us.
All right, any questions on that?
Well, and you said, to clarify again, then for new employees coming in, it's still competitive even after the $50?
Yes, absolutely, and that was one of the things we wanted to ensure, and as we look at even our benefits package, we want to ensure that we're in the market value, because we know that some employees, not usually our younger teachers and staff, will look at that because they're not real concerned about retirement when they're 23. They need to be, but not always is that something that they're engaged in or worrying about. But certainly we looked at that for what about our employees who walk in with 15 years of experience who are going to be very interested in this, and then looking at what's happening with our peer districts and knowing that we're still in the game with them.
Okay, we need a motion, please,
make
to,
a motion.
all right, thank you, Deb. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jana. All in favor? Okay, very good. I need a motion to go into executive session. I believe that's what we've got left, right?
Yes, sir,
All right,
that's
let's get a
it.
motion to executive session. Bill, Drew, Kelly, I'll get to Kelly. All in favor? We will go into executive session. We will come back and public session, and any decisions that we make in there, we will vote on that, or not decisions we make in there, consideration we make in there, we will come back out and vote on in public. Thank you, everybody.
Lock the door.
She's already got the contract.
Okay, we will move back into session. Let the record state. We have consideration and possible action on approval of any professional contract personnel to be employed in status of current professional personnel. Anyway, we got to approve the new hires. Do I have a motion to do so?
I make a
Smith
motion
makes a
to
motion to
approve the new
approve.
hires.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, Jana, very good. All in favor? Great. We have a motion, I'm sorry?
For resignation.
Yep, motion for resignations to approve those. Bill Beavers makes a motion, second. I'm thinking Dina, all in favor? Fabulous. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to
Thank you,
adjourn.
Jana. Second by Bill, all in favor? Good night, good luck.
Good night.
And good luck.